Hey, greetings everyone. It's Colonel Allen West here, and it's time for another one of our Facebook Live events that we do every 2 weeks. And as always, I want to say thank you to our website administrator, Marie, and our support team. I want to also thank everyone in our Facebook discussion group that is out there, and also our special operations team for all they do to make sure that the missives that are posted there on Facebook and on the Old School Patriot website, you guys share with others, and you use that as platforms to have further discussion, because I think that if we're going to get this constitutional republic back on the right track, we have to continue to share our thoughts, perspectives, and insights. And what I always try to do is bring out points that can help to illuminate you and help you to further understand some of the things that are going on. So it's deeply humbling that you would take 30 minutes out of your busy schedules, your evenings, to spend here on this Facebook Live event with the Old School Patriot. First of all, before I get started, you know, lots of times we don't remember that we still have men and women standing on freedom's frontier, that we have men and women still in the harm's way and still protecting us and still doing what is necessary to defeat the evil and the enemies of this great nation and the enemies of liberty and freedom all over the globe that still exist. Well, this week we lost 3 of our warriors. And when I say warriors, I truly mean warriors. They were killed in Afghanistan because of an improvised explosive device. And I just want to share their names because we don't talk about it too much. Sometimes we politicize these things, but you know, going into this incredible Christmas season, there's going to be 3 empty chairs that are out there. And those empty chairs belong to Captain Andrew Ross and Sergeant First Class Eric Emond, both of the 3rd Special Forces Group out of Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And then you have United States Air Force Staff Sergeant Dylan Elkin, who was a combat controller, and he was from the 26th Special Tactics Squadron that's out of New Mexico. Captain Ross, Sergeant First Class Amon, and Staff Sergeant Elkin. Our thoughts, our prayers, our sincere condolences go out to the families who lost their loved ones, who lost 3, who continue to do as Abraham Lincoln talked about in the Gettysburg Address. They gave the last full measure of devotion so that we can be here having this important discussion. Let us remember their names, and let us remember that freedom is not free, and that there still is a very evil and dedicated enemy out there called the Taliban. How interesting it is that in the state of Arizona, they elected someone to be a United States senator that thought it was fine to fight for the Taliban. This is how upside down things have gotten here in the United States of America. And also I want to thank you for supporting, you know, my second book, Hold Texas, Hold the Nation, Victory or Death. Is doing incredibly well. And I tell you what, you guys may make this a New York Times bestseller. And I can tell you that probably one of the worst things that the New York Times wants to have to do is admit that a Black conservative from the inner city of Atlanta, Georgia, has a New York Times bestseller, made their list. But Hold Texas, Hold the Nation is a very important read, because what we see happening in many red states, and we shared that with you previously, is that people are moving into these successful red states, these economically strong red states, where there's opportunities and jobs because they have the right type of policies, the tax policies and regulatory policies. And they're changing those states, like in Arizona or New Mexico and Nevada, and also Colorado. They almost were successful in Georgia with the gubernatorial race, in Florida even. Well, they can't count votes down in Florida. And then also when you look at what is happening in Virginia, where Northern Virginia is dictating the politics of the rest of that state, it's very important that people that are residing in these very successful, strong red states understand what is happening. It's part of that strategic blueprint. And yes, if you have not been paying attention, Robert Francis O'Rourke is being touted to run for president in 2020. Why is that? Because he put Texas in play by coming 3 percentage points away from winning a statewide U.S. Senate seat here in the Lone Star State. So once again, Hold Texas, Hold the Nation, Victory or Death. You can order it out there on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and maybe, hopefully, I'll be around and I can put my John Hancock in there. Now, I will tell you that next weekend, I'll be out in Las Vegas. I'll be out in Las Vegas for the big National Rodeo Championships there. I've been invited out by Boot Barn and also Wrangler to, do some book signing. And I always tell you that my two favorite jeans are Cinch jeans and Wrangler jeans. So guess what? I'll be wearing my Wrangler jeans. And I do go out and purchase my Western apparel at the Boot Barn, which is not too far away from where I live here in Dallas, Texas. But enough about that. Let's talk about some critical things that are going on before I go over and talk to you all and answer some of your questions. President Trump is on his way down to Buenos Aires for the G20 summit. And if you were not listening earlier today, President Trump canceled his meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. And I think that was a very good move, because there has to be a time when we start to make sure that the abhorrent behavior, the belligerence that we see out there by some of these actors, like a Vladimir Putin, we have to have consequences and ramifications. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about the most recent incident that occurred between Russia and the Ukraine, where the Russians seized several Ukrainian cargo ships and also some sailors from the Ukraine. Now, many of you are sitting around saying, hey, Colonel West, we're here, we're getting ready to go into Christmas. Why should I care about what's happening between Russia and the Ukraine? Because Vladimir Putin is a person that once stated that his greatest disappointment of the 20th century was the collapse of the Soviet Union. And without a doubt, he has his eyes on the Ukraine. The Ukraine is a very important part. Without the Ukraine, Russia, or what used to be the Soviet Union, it is not an empire. They want the Ukraine back within their sphere of control and their sphere of influence. And that is why during the Obama administration, Vladimir Putin, using Russian paramilitaries, separatists, whatever you call it, but they were Russian paramilitaries, came in and took over the Crimea. Very important thing. Now, Crimea is right across in what is called the Kerch Straits from Russia. Now, what Russia did very quickly after seizing the Crimea was they built a land bridge. This incredible span, I think it's about a couple of miles, couple and a half miles, that goes from Russia over to the Crimea to connect the two. Vladimir Putin even drove a car across there to symbolize how important it was. But the interesting thing about that bridge and the Kerch Straits right there is because to the north is the Sea of Azov, and to the south is the Black Sea. And in the Sea of Azov, which is only about 50 feet deep, there are two major ports for Ukraine. Two major ports where they do most of their import and export as part of their sea lane of commerce. And in 2003, they had an agreement with Russia that they would be able to use the Kerch Straits and freedom of navigation. There would not be a disruption to their commerce. But now the expansionism of Vladimir Putin has caused him to do exactly this. This is part of his strategic plan. And also he's putting a lot of pressure on the Baltic states, Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania. Now, how did President Obama respond to the belligerent actions of Vladimir Putin? Well, he sent the Ukrainian socks and MREs. What a swell guy. But what has President Trump done? Well, he has increased military-to-military cooperation. We have deployments of the A-10 close air support aircraft. We also have our special operators that are working with the Ukrainians. We have sent them more weapons and ammunition. And also, we are having a presence in the Baltic states. That's how you respond to a bully and a dictator. And I want to applaud President Trump for not sitting down and meeting with Vladimir Putin during this G20. One of the most important things that we can do economically to Russia at this time is to make sure that we are exporting more of our oil and natural gas resources into Eastern Europe, especially to the Ukraine, especially to the Baltic states, Poland, because we need to make sure that that incredible resource, they're not tethered to the Soviet Union. I said the Soviet Union. I meant to say Russia, but wanted to say. But they're not tethered to Russia for that important resource. Because one of the things that we have to start doing is looking around to some of these dictators, despots, and theocrats, such as Vladimir Putin in Russia, is understand that if we can economically undermine them, then his military expansionist goals, he will not be able to support them. So it's very important that we use our energy security as part of our economic security, but also as part of our national security. More shipments of oil and natural gas, make sure that we are, continuing this military to military cooperation and the arms sales that we have to the Ukrainians. I think that NATO may need to look at providing escorts to Ukrainian cargo ships that are transiting out of the Sea of Azov through the Kerch Straits down to the Black Sea and elsewhere. We need to send a very clear message to Russia and Vladimir Putin that we're not going to accept this. And also remember that there were no consequences for the fact that there were Russians with a surface-to-air missile system that shot down a civilian airliner, killing everyone on board. This has to end. That was the previous administration. I think we have a different administration. Now, the other key actor that's going to be down there in the G20 is China's new, dictator for life, Xi Jinping. And just so you know, that China is now starting to construct their third aircraft carrier, which they believe will be complete 2.5 years from now. And I guarantee you a lot of the technology that's going in on that aircraft carrier, well, it has probably been stolen from the United States of America. As a matter of fact, when you look at China's new strike fighter, it really does resemble the F-35. And that is what we have to do. We have to send a very clear message to China that we will no longer tolerate the theft of our intellectual property. We will no longer tolerate the forced transfer of technology. We will no longer, tolerate this communist country that is threatening all of its neighbors. Think about when was the last time you saw an Asian nation that was building up its maritime forces, naval forces, and also putting military fortifications on islands out in the Pacific. It's exactly what China is doing, namely right now the South China Sea. And first and foremost, they're sending many different threats to Taiwan. Taiwan is a great ally that the United States should build a better relationship with, and that sends a clear message to Xi Jinping. But what China and Xi Jinping is relying on is that we don't have the steadfastness, we don't have the resolve to wait them out and to force them into capitulation. And that's what we have to have happen. Right now, China is sea testing its first domestically built aircraft carrier. And it's out in the South China Sea. And they continue to fortify these man-made islands in the South China Sea. So what we need to do here at the G20, President Trump, as you are flying down there, we need to make sure that we're keeping this economic pressure on China. And what we, the American people, have to do is understand that there may be some sacrifices that are required because China does not believe that we have the stomach for the long haul. If you have not read, you should read the One Belt, One Road Strategic Initiative. That's what China is looking to implement to become the global hegemon, the dominant power in the world by 2025. Last time I checked, that's not too far away from here. It's about 7 years. 6 actually, if you go ahead and say 2018 is over. When you look at what China is doing from East Africa and Djibouti all the way through to Pakistan with the Chinese-Pakistan Economic Corridor, they're building port facilities in Karachi, Pakistan. They're trying to get a foothold, buying up mineral rights in Afghanistan, where we just lost 3 of our warriors, our Spartans, 2 Green Beret, and 1 Air Force combat controller. See, China is very serious about becoming a dominant power. And China has understood that as a communist country, they could still use free market capitalism to prop themselves up. They're not improving the quality of life for everyday Chinese citizens. As a matter of fact, their air quality is pretty bad. So all these people talking about global warming, climate change, and whatever, the pressure should be placed on China, not so much on the United States of America. But those are the type of topics that need to be dealt with there at the G20. And we need to understand that the American people and America, we need to fight for this in the long haul. We cannot continue to do our foreign policy like we are driving through a McDonald's. Because if we continue to have a foreign policy or national security strategy that's based upon, every 2 years or 4 years, every election cycle, we will not win against these people that are thinking 20, 25, 50 years down the road. And that's so important. Last thing I want to talk about before I go over to your questions is, if we're a sovereign nation, we have to control our borders. There's no other discussion about it. These people that believe in open borders, that believe in abolishing our Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, no, that's a non-starter. What we saw happen this past weekend at our border was a violation of our sovereignty. When you are throwing bottles and rocks at our United States Border Patrol agents, when you are illegally breaching through our border to enter the United States of America, that is an act of an invasion. We didn't invite you in. And the fact that we have a sector of our border that was able to be breached just like that, right in front of our Border Patrol, right in front of all of these cameras, that's why we need to have a border wall. One of the things that the Republicans need to do, they need to find their big boy pants. They're in a lame duck session. They have lost control of the House. You need to go big or go home. Well, some of you are going home. We need to fund this border wall. That's part of our border security system. Because unfortunately, there are people that don't believe that we're a sovereign nation. So we need to make sure that we are providing the safety and security for the United States of America. We need to make sure that we are standing up for the rule of law in these great United States of America. So coming up this weekend, G20. Look at what happens with President Trump and Xi Jinping. I'm glad that we are not having a meeting with Vladimir Putin because of what he is doing to the Ukraine. And I think this Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince from Saudi Arabia, I don't think we should be sitting down with him. I know some people may not care about Jamal Khashoggi, but at some point in time, we need to tell the Saudis, we just don't care about your behaviors anymore. There is no way that 17 or 18 people just went to Turkey, went into the Saudi consulate, and butchered a person without the leadership knowing about it. I refuse to believe that. And again, these despots, these dictators, these theocrats, there has to be consequences and ramifications for their actions. Before I go to your comments and your questions, let me just repeat their names again. Captain Andrew Ross, Sergeant First Class Eric Eamon of the 3rd Special Forces Group, Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and United States Air Force Staff Sergeant Dylan Elkin out of New Mexico. Those are the names of the 3 warriors, the 3 Spartans, the 3 Americans standing as watchmen on the walls that we lost this week. God rest their souls and God be with their families. All right, let's see what you got to say. China has no atmosphere, Ramon Rodriguez. You know, I was just talking to a dear friend who was over there doing some business in China just recently, and they actually had to close down the highways because of the lack of air quality. As a matter of fact, at Shanghai Airport, I believe, they're not even open in the mornings until they can clear the fog and all the smog that is out there. They're the ones that we should talk to about climate change and global warming. Sarah, overall, materialization toward multipolar future, time to stop it now. Hey, Ken Glass, you saying I'm demand? No, you demand. And thank you so much very much for getting the book. John Wittenberg, what are your future political plans? You know, I just wait for the Lord to point me in the direction he will go. If the people here in the great state of Texas want the old school patriot to represent them, I'll be happy to answer that call to service, but we'll see what the Lord has planned for the future. Tim Eno, no enforceable borders, no sovereign nation. You're exactly right. You know, we're a nation of laws. I love it when people say that we're a nation of immigrants. Okay, I got that. But first and foremost, we're a nation of laws. And we're a nation of legal immigration. You know, everyone wants to talk about how their forefathers and everyone came here to America. They did. They knocked on the front door and we said, hey, how you doing? Would you like to enter? Absolutely. Let us check you out first. This is not about coming through the back door and crawling over the fence and hanging out and squatting in the yard. That's what some people are seeking to do. And I wrote a piece earlier and I did a little video talk about what is asylum. I want you to take a look at that video or just read that piece that I wrote for CNS News, because asylum means that you are politically oppressed in your home country. I don't think people that are marching toward the United States of America, throwing bottles and rocks at our Border Patrol agents, carrying the flags of their home countries, doesn't sound to me like they are politically oppressed. Does it sound like that to you? Okay, Cindy Moore, you talk common sense and the truth. Well, I'm from down south, and that's all I can do. And I just want to say, remember, I was born and raised in Georgia, so we know who is playing in the SEC championship this weekend. So I guess you kind of know who I'm cheering for. And Coach Jeremy Pruitt at Tennessee, we're still with you. This was a rough end to the season, but we know you can turn around. Mercedes Fleischman, God bless our military and their families, absolutely. And once again, Captain Andrew Ross and Sergeant First Class Eric Eamon of the 3rd Special Forces Group out of Fort Bragg, and Air Force Staff Sergeant Dylan Elkin out of the 26th Special Tactics Squadron out of New Mexico. Those are our 3 warriors that lost their lives in Afghanistan this week to an improvised explosive device. Robert Barras, U.S. should stand by Hungary and other allies. You're absolutely right. I think this is a very important time to show our resolve toward those Eastern European countries. And if you want to look at old Europe, France and Germany and Belgium and Switzerland, as opposed to New Europe, the Eastern European countries, these Eastern European countries understand what liberty and freedom is all about because they lived under that scourge of the Soviet Union for so long. So I think that you may see a shift in what we are doing in Europe. Poland is asking us to build military facilities there in their country, and that they will be willing to help and pay for it, what have you. I don't know if some of you saw the commercials, but there were some Polish soldiers that did a commercial talking about Thanksgiving and how much they appreciate the United States of America. So I think that we need to be shifting our focus in Europe more so to the new Europe and not the old Europe, because I think the old Europe, they may be lost when you look at what is happening, thanks to Angela Merkel and her not defending the borders of her sovereign nation and allowing a migrant caravan to come in, which was mostly single military-aged males. The exact same thing you see in this caravan that's coming up from Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador toward our border. Okay, Jim Carbone, thank you, Colonel West. Is the state of our military up to any challenge? I will tell you, Jim, that the state of our military, we haven't gotten back there yet. During the Obama era, the Obama years, our United States Army went down to pre-World War II levels. Our United States Marine Corps was at World War I levels. Our United States Navy, 1917 levels. Just to give you a comparative analysis, during the Reagan years, we had close to 530 surface warships, vessels, surface combatant ships. Today, the United States Navy, that global force for good, is about 280 to 285 surface warships, warship vessels. That's an incredible drop. The oceans didn't shrink. Now, some people may think they're rising, but the oceans didn't shrink. And our commitments are definitely a little bit more increased. Remember during the Obama administration, the first and only time that we never had aircraft carrier coverage in the Persian Gulf came in the Obama years. We had to ask the French to provide carrier coverage in the Persian Gulf while we were fighting ISIS. Never forget that. Bill Ayers, too bad we didn't have you instead of Obama as our first African-American president. I would have done a good job. I would just have done the best that I could do. And, I consider myself an American black man. That's how I'd like to be known. Never been to Africa. Maybe I'll get the chance to go over there. I haven't traced my lineage back, but as far as I know, my folks from Georgia, and the United States is my home. So I'm an American black man. And I'm quite sure that there are people out there on the left that will say that I'm a self-hating black person. Nah, I just know that this is my homeland, and it's a homeland that I love. And my roots are here. They started in Georgia, and that's where they'll always be. And now, guess what? I set up my roots and I set up my home here in Texas, and there's a great fight for liberty that's going on here. So I'm just an American black man. Andrew Edward Brody, we miss you in Florida, sir. Wish we could have you back. Andrew, I got to tell you something. These folks here in Texas ain't letting me come back. And, I'm pretty much so going to stay on this side of the Mississippi River. I'll be happy to come back and visit, but I'll be making my home here in Texas. And it's an important fight that's going on here in Texas. As I said in this book, we got to hold Texas if we're going to hold the nation. So just like the Tennessee Volunteers of old, I'm here to take my position on the ramparts of the Alamo. All right. Hey, Joanne Williams West, points well made. Joanne Williams West is my sister-in-law that I love very dearly, and she is the mother of my nephew, who is Major Herman West III, who is stationed at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. So, Joanne, thanks so much, dear, and it was good to see you a couple of months ago. Richard Merriman, helicopter blades damaged by rocks thrown, my friend, is border control as a border control pilot. Hey, these are the type of things that are going on. Let me tell you something. When I was in Iraq, a rock can do a lot of harm to a person. You know, when our troops were traveling in convoys and Humvees or in Bradley fighting vehicles, and these little rascals were throwing the rocks with the slings, you could take someone out. You could kill them. As a matter of fact, David did kill Goliath with a rock. So people throwing rocks at our Border Patrol agents, that's assault. And the fact that we responded with a non-lethal means, which was tear gas, and guess what? That shows a lot of discipline and restraint. And how interesting it is that the liberal progressive media, well, they act like this was something horrible, but they didn't say anything during the Obama administration when they used pepper spray and tear gas. I hate hypocrisy. Let's see what we got going on here. I'm trying to wait for you, Sarah. Trying to see if you pop up. Linda Cannon Chasen, I voted for your brother, and thank you for being a voice for so many. Linda, thank you so much. If y'all didn't know, my older brother, Herman West Jr., ran for Congress down in South Georgia against Sanford Bishop, and he was not successful, but he tried. And my older brother is a former Marine, wounded at Quezon, and that's just what Marines do. They always seek to serve this great nation. Mark Culberson, please run in 2020, sir. We'll see. Mercedes Fleischman, Sewanee, Georgia. I know Sewanee very well. God bless you back there in the Peach State. Let's see. Merkel and Hillary share quarters at Gitmo. Well, I don't know about all that, but they definitely, Angela Merkel definitely did cause the downfall and the undermining of Europe. Let's see. All right, guys. All right. Enough of the over-the-top stuff. Great American, hama, hama, hama. Let's see. What else is going on over here on the comments section? Oh, and again, a reminder, Las Vegas, everyone out there in Clark County, I will be at the United States National Rodeo Championships next weekend. I'll be hanging out at the Boot Barn and also the Wrangler Jeans booth areas, what have you. We'll have our book out there for you to get me to sign and autograph for you, and just take a lot of great pictures and have a good old time out there doing the rodeo. So I look forward to seeing y'all out there. Harley Nana, I love your views of American black man. Hell yeah. Hey, that's all I am. Just a simple old American black man, just like my dad, my older brother, all of us. That's our lineage, the West Men. Our capital ships, such as aircraft carrier the Gerald Ford, who has 2 years of kinks to work out in the yards, and the next two, Kennedy and Enterprise, are next. Hey, Ralph Kirkhart, you bring up a great point. You know, you have to have these maintenance cycles for these aircraft carriers. And one of the things that we saw, remember the rash of incidents we saw with our naval warships and our vessels? That's because we did not have the time for training and also the time for maintenance. Remember what I said, we have had huge personnel cutbacks for the people that should be out there manning the rails on our surface warships. You know, when you talk about cuts to the military, now one of the things that a lot of people don't understand, we're cutting down into the bone marrow. We're cutting the people that are out there on the front lines, the tip of the spear. You don't see a reduction in force in the Pentagon. You don't see a reduction in force at all of these huge headquarters that we have going on. You don't see us looking how we can streamline and better affect our acquisition and procurement process. That's where we need to have the cuts to the military, not to the people that we're asking to go out there, like Captain Ross, our First Class Airman, and Staff Sergeant Elkin. We don't need to be cutting those guys. Those guys should not be out there 6, 7, 8 combat tours of duty. If we're going to have cuts to the military, Let's cut the fat. And there's a lot of fat running around the Pentagon. I know. I saw it. But interesting enough, we're about to have a new change of leadership up there in Washington, D.C. come January. And, you know, all those folks talking about they weren't going to vote for Nancy Pelosi, it was just lying. She looked at them. She told them, sit down in the corner, shut up, vote for me, or else I'll cut you off at the kneecaps. And that's what they're going to do. They're going to comply. But just understand the type of people that are going to be in chairmanship positions in the United States House of Representatives. Adam Smith is going to be the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee. He's from King County out there in Seattle. He thinks that what I just said tonight, I'm being an alarmist, talking about the degraded capability and capacity of our military. These are the type of people that we voted to be in power in the People's House. Now, I'm just hoping and praying that maybe we will see the light. Kind of like when parents tell you don't touch the stove, and you touch the stove and you realize you got burned. We're going to get burned in the next couple of years. Because these people are only going to focus on control and power. And I just pray that the American people can wake up. Parents and grandparents, start talking to your kids when they come back home from college and university over this Christmas break. Tell them socialism sucks. Socialism takes away your stuff. Number one, your freedoms. Find someone from Venezuela and ask them just how great socialism has worked out for them. And I know all these brainiacs here think that, you know, they really didn't do socialism right. There's only one right way to do socialism, and it always ends up the same way. People eating out of garbage cans. So think about this, and I'll close on this point. Captain Andrew Ross, Sergeant First Class Eric Eamon, and Staff Sergeant Dylan Elkin did not die, did not make that ultimate sacrifice, did not give the last full measure of devotion for America to become a socialist nation. They did it because they took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and to bear true faith and allegiance to the same. Now, those people that are going to be sworn in the new Congress in January, supposedly they have taken or are going to take an oath to our Constitution, to our rule of law. But when you're advocating for wealth redistribution, nationalizing economic production, creating and expanding welfare states, Medicare for all, which means health care for no one, open borders, abolishing ICE, demonizing our law enforcement agencies, that's not America. It's time for us, the old school patriots, to rise up. And I'll be right there with you. So God bless you all. Have a great Thursday night. Take care, y'all.